Alright, hello everyone, my name is Shep, welcome back to the Butcher's Circus. Today we have a really cool video idea that NumCookie suggested. I think I've done this before with J-Man, but it was quite a long time ago, and I think we cheated on the rules a little bit. But we are playing bleed teams, full bleed teams, against full blight teams. I'm the one that's going to be playing the blight, and I have a shield breaker, an antiquarian, an abomination, and a grave robber. So you might be wondering, why is your antiquarian in second? Why does this setup look so weird? Well, the reason it looks so weird is because the abomination can only use Beastfile, the shieldbreaker can only use her blight abilities, and that gets really tricky once the characters start moving around, because the abomination is very limited in terms of positions, and the shieldbreaker, once she does use both her position 1 blight abilities, she can only use her captivate in position 2, so she's just gonna have to stay put there. So you couldn't really put the A-bomb in second, or else after you go for an Adder's Kiss or something, you won't be able to act. So we're off to a pretty poor start here, because there was a bleed out that somehow hit from the enemy Hellion into a punish that got a very meaty crit onto my antiquarian. So I think that in this first match we were able to use defensive moves. I think those were allowed. In the second match, we will only be able to use offensive moves that either cause bleed or blight. Bleed from our opponent and blight for me, but in this one we were not, we were still allowed to use defensive moves, no matter what they were. So I did use that Beastfile, which is fantastic. It's a really nice ability, especially for a situation like this, because it does have riposte and it just applies blight and stress. It's all around great. And with my antiquarian Testo, I just decided to click her, go for Festering Vapors. I do have Materia Pestis. I have the Uri Trinket, so that's giving me an extra 12 accuracy, so I still had pretty decent hit chances, and I'm slowly but surely taking away at my opponent's HP with the Impale and the Beastfile and the Festering Vapors. On my opponent's side, there's a Flagellant, which, you know, just Flagellant things. He's a terribly overpowered character, and he's gonna be very tough to deal with, because he can heal the other characters by dropping to Death's Door. He can heal himself with Exsanguinate, so Exsanguinate is still perfectly allowed because it's a bleed ability, and once he actually dies, the other characters get healed. So it's gonna be very difficult to deal with him, but we'll try to look past that for a little bit. So right now, we do have a Panic Darts going into the enemy doggy, because he is the only full team AoE character. That's the character that I'm mostly scared of. And right now, with my antiquarian, there's a few things I can do here, and I think I'm just gonna drop a Festering Vapors. That's right, I do decide to drop a Festering Vapors here to get that blight onto the doggy, keep applying more blight onto the entire enemy team, because once they all start blighting down to 0, the Shieldbreaker, which has the finisher, my Shieldbreaker does have the finisher, she'll be able to just get death blows like pretty easily. I think she's my only finisher character here, because I kind of wanted different trinkets on the other ones. So I did need some sort of accuracy on the abomination, and I do very much like Spike Chain, because it gives you blight chance and it gives you damage for range skills, so it makes his riposte absolutely fantastic. And I wanted as much dodge on the grave robber as possible, as well as having very decent accuracy, because I wasn't really gonna buff accuracy, so I needed that Panic Darts to just hit quite consistently. Here we drop a Captivate on the Flashlight, so he's going to be dropping down to 0 HP, but I might be able to get a kill on him before that even happens, because he's going to be dazed for the entire duration of round 3, so I'm going to have a lot of actions before it actually becomes his turn to act again and go for an Exsanguinate. He hasn't even dropped on Exsanguinate yet. So here comes the Harvest. The riposte sadly misses, because with only an 85 base on the riposting accuracy, that's the same for every character, and having an only extra 10 accuracy means that your accuracy isn't really fantastic, especially against a Jesuit Monkey's Paw, but you know, we did hit him once with riposte already, so I can't really complain too much. Here we decided to drop Panic Darts onto that Flagellant, of course, because he's going to be dropping down to 0, and now with the Beastfile we will be able to get a death blow. And even if Beastfile isn't a death blow, Captivate is very likely to get one because of that finisher, and I'm going to be quite happy about that. So thankfully the Bleed Out misses. As we all know, Bleed Out has 80 accuracy, which is terrible, absolutely terrible, and even though there's double accuracy trinkets on that Hellion, she still only has 100 accuracy on it, and with my Shieldbreaker having her 35 dodge, she would have 50 normally if you did have both dodge trinkets, but I wanted to give her the finisher trinket so she could actually get the kills. You definitely need a finisher if you're trying to run a crazy team like this, because you're going to be doing a very respectable amount of AoE bleeds and blights, right, depending on which team you're using, and you definitely do want to follow up on those by getting those kills. So now we're going to go for the Captivate. Because of the finisher we do get that very nice 60, but we also heal all the other characters up to their respective HP amounts. Well, not quite, they still had a lot of DOT on them, and they weren't quite at almost full HP, so the heal did help them very much, because now the doggy isn't quite at their store, and the riposte isn't gonna get to their store check. But the riposte is gonna get at their store on the doggy, and it is gonna make him afflicted as well, because we did get enough stress on that, so that is very, very good. I also must say that my opponent did a little bit of a misplay here by not having a finisher on any of his characters, so I do believe that will be rectified on the second match, but for now, no finisher, which means that I do have this death blow advantage. So here I'm gonna drop panic darts, and the good thing about focusing down that doggy with panic darts and V-Smile is with the riposte, because the riposte also causes stress, is that eventually he will go down to stress even if he survives a lot of those death blows. So we do have that going for us. One thing we don't have going for us though is that pretty much my characters are pretty much dying here, right? They're in absolutely terrible shape. My Abomination's at 0 HP, he's still blighting out for 14, so even if I went for a heal it wouldn't be too great. My Shieldbreaker's at 0 HP, my Grave Robber is a little bit better off, but she's still not feeling too well, and that is quite sad. That is quite sad, because considering the doggy is still alive and he's still ready to go with those AoE abilities, yeah, it's not too great. I think both my characters still have 75% death blow resistance, so here come 2 death storage checks, and thankfully neither of them hit. So here I probably want to use my characters at death store first, so I can actually go for some death blows and use them before they just, you know, go oof. That is typically what you want to do here. Also, if you're thinking about just bringing a Crusader with Hemlock, you know, crushed Hemlock, to just apply the blights on your every move, that's cheating. The ability needs to cause blight by default if you do want to run this challenge appropriately. Because imagine if you ran a Crusader with Sacred Blade and Hemlock, like that's almost as good as a regular Crusader. It might even be better in some situations, because the Hemlock blight does apply very well onto that stunning blow, and it really makes it do way more damage than it should be, because it's an extra 2 blight for 2 rounds, right? If it crits, it's 3 rounds. That's pretty brutal. You know, it's also pretty brutal, that harvest. That harvest hurt like hell, because that's goodbye to my Shieldbreaker, that's my Grave Robber at 0 HP, and that's my Abomination in a position where he can't do anything, so this is quite terrible. And even if he does go back to position 2, there's 20 blight there's 20 bleed on that Shieldbreaker, so her corpse is going to be gone in 2 rounds at the most, you know. That's considering that there won't be a harvest before that, or considering that there won't be a bleed out or something to get the corpse gone, but my opponent just decides to rush things through a little bit, decides to drop a bleed out on my Abomination anyway, which isn't a bad choice by any means, because bleed out not only had a chance of getting a death blow, it also reduces death blow resistance. So this is one of those rare situations where bleed out is actually really good, because now the death blow chance onto my A-bomb is quite significant. It's a 75% chance. However, you know, sometimes 75 is quite good, but you're not always going to get it, and my Abomination does stay alive for a little while longer. So we're going to make use of that while we can, and we're going to drop a V-Smile here. It's probably going to miss, but thankfully it doesn't, and that Jester is dropping to 0 HP and getting afflicted at the same time, so that's great. Now, one bad thing about the Blight team compared to the Bleed team is that the Bleed team only has one character that can't do anything if they're the last character alive, which is the Jester. He only has Harvest to use as a Bleed ability, so you can only use it from positions 2 and 3, so if you're in position 1, then, you know, you can't do anything with it. Also, that is a very crucial pass. While the Blight team can't do anything with the Grave Robber, because if she's in position 1, she can't use Panic Darts, and if she's in position, and if the Abomination's in position 1, he can't use V-Smile. Now, that move there was quite bad, because yeah, both my characters go on the shield breaker slip and slide, and now my grave robber is in position 1, which isn't fantastic. All I need right now is for this abomination to survive, but of course with 10% death resistance, the chances of that happening aren't too significant. And at this point, I have two options. I can either pass, or I can move back, or I could... yeah, that's basically the options I had. Actually, I do believe I was still allowed to go for the defensive moves here, yeah. I think I will be using the defensive moves in this match, even though for the second match that would be considered cheating. So yeah, my opponent right now can't do anything, and he just sends me a message like, well, what do I do? And I just tell him, well, either you pass or you move forward. That's what you can do. You can't use Dirk Stab or the Finale, of course. So it is really sad to have a Jester and not be able to use Finale, but that's just the situation you're in. And I believe this is just going to be a move forward so you don't take the extra stress from passing. And now, here comes the Panic Darts. Of course, since the Shadow Fade was an act out, even in the second match it would be perfectly fine, but here comes the move forward again. So we got lucky with the Shadow Fade act out, but here comes the move forward, and in this match, since the defensive abilities were still allowed, I just end up on using that Shadow Fade, which is going to give us more stress, more death row dealt chance. And with that Shadow Fade, with the Jester being in position 1 and the Hellion blighting out to just vanishing, of course, it is very difficult for my opponent to win this. If this does come down eventually to both characters just being in front of each other in a 1v1, it's going to be pass wars. It is going to be pass wars, and I'm not sure who takes more stress, and I haven't really seen the afflictions. I can't remember what exactly both of us got, but if someone got abusive, then, well, basically you have a great time. Actually, what you want most in a situation like this is fearful. That is actually what you want most in a situation like this during the pass wars, because you're going to pass on your own, right? And if you pass on your own, you actually don't take stress. So that is something that's quite interesting about passing on your own. So here comes the Death Star check. I did use Shadow Fade, so I had a superior chance of just oofing myself there, so that would be terrible if that happened. And here I go for the Panic Darts. I don't even have a confirmed hit chance, but we just get the death blow despite the extra death blow resistance, and say goodbye to your little Jester. The Grave Robber does take the W here. So here we go on to a match number 2. Now we have the same setup, I believe, though I do think I changed the trinket on my Antiquarian to make her just a tiny bit tankier. Let me just get rid of that. Yeah, I did change the trinket on her if I remember correctly. I think I gave her a monkey spell just so she would have a bit more dodge. She had the Eerie Eye before, and with the monkey spell I have a little bit less accuracy, but now I actually have very decent amounts of dodge, so she should be able to stay alive. And I just changed out the monkey spell on the Shieldbreaker to the Graceful Anklet, so overall, really decent time. My opponent changed out the Crimson Hook on the doggy for the finisher, so that doggy is even more of a priority target this time around. So, interesting if it bleeds onto my Abomination, but I believe that is still a good play, because going for the if it bleeds before the riposte actually happens is quite smart. Now there's going to be a Harvest, and even though we failed the beast, the immediate beast pile, now we get the hit on the riposte, and we get a very nice crit for 9. And yeah, it's doing a lot of damage because that Spike Chain, and now it's going to do even more damage because I got the crit. So that doggy is going to see himself go through quite a tough time if he does decide to go for Hound's Area, because the repulse is going to hit him pretty hard. If it hits, you know, if it hits, it is going to hit him pretty hard. And yeah, now we are definitely not going to see any Battle Ballad, no Shadow Fade action, no no Toxin Trickery, no Serpent Sways, no Self-Heals, no Adrenaline Rush, absolutely none of that. There is still Exsanguinate, because, you know, Flagellants can still cause bleeds at that. Yeah, it's just flagellant things, I suppose. But yeah, here I think my Antiquarian might still be focused down. I think I was a little bit surprised, and oh, it's just going to be an immediate Drain of Sorrows. Yeah, you can see the riposte, 11. Riposting a character for 11, that's just brutal. With the beast spell, right? So it's a riposte that technically shouldn't do too much damage. What it should be doing is like blight and stress and a little bit of damage, but no, it's hitting as hard as a Man-at-Arms riposte, or even a, you know, kind of a low rolling Harman riposte, if you want to put it that way. So yeah, we decided to drop very obvious Panic Darts onto the doggy, because, you know, that's 100% what you want to do here. You want to get the doggy out of the match. He's the only character with finisher. And with the repulse, we also hit for 8, so that was pretty good. Here I decide to drop an Adder's Kiss onto the Hellion, because she's also decently high priority target. She has that bleed out, and she has if it bleeds. Bleed out, you know, once again, pretty scary because of that minus death blow resistance. So taking her out is going to be a pretty decent play here. I'm sure that the doggy was already dropping to 0 HP from the blights, so I think that was perfectly fine for us. And now she's pretty much blighting down to 0, so that's great. The Flagellant here can use a little bit of an early Exsanguinate, and I do wonder if he's going to. He does decide to drop it, and gets quite lucky. Not only in hitting the Exsanguinate onto a Monkey Spawn character, but crit healing the heal, so that is very annoying to deal with, but yeah, I guess the Flagellant's gonna stay alive for a whole lot longer this time around. So my accuracy values are garbage with Captivate, because it only has 80 accuracy base, so even against a character with 0 dodge, it only has an 84% hit chance with the Graceful Anklet, which is far from reliable, but you know, you just have to go for it, I guess. Just close your eyes and go for that Captivator. So my opponent did, going for that Exsanguinate, and it did pay off. It did very much pay off, because now my Antiquarian is dropping down to 0 HP, and she's also a very powerful character here, right? She has that AoE Materia Pestis stacks on the opponent. If she does get a few of those off, they're all gonna blight down to 0 really quickly. So here comes if it bleeds. There's a repulse for 11, and yeah, that Hellion is completely done for. She's gonna be ticking down to 0, and after that it's just gonna be death blows on her. Hopefully death blows on her. At this point, I'm pretty adamant on getting a death blow somewhere, but I'm also pretty adamant on spreading out the damage so I can get death blows with not with Captivate, but with Impale. We haven't really seen Impale just do fantastically yet, but once Impale does come into play here, it might be getting 2-3 death blows just in one move. Because with the finisher, of course, you apply it to every single character you hit, and that is going to be absolutely great. Well, because the Hellion's dropping down to Death's Door next round, the Doggy's dropping down to Death's Door next round, the Jester's dropping down to Death's Door next round, so overall we're having a great time here. My opponent doesn't want to go for the Harvest, which is a little bit surprising, but I guess it does make sense, because the chance of actually hitting the Shieldbreaker wasn't fantastic, and the chance of hitting the Abomination was, but he's already bleeding down to 0 HP, so it wasn't too necessary. So just moving back to keep the Jester alive for a little while longer is, you know, it's definitely a choice. I'm not sure I would have done that. I think hitting the Shieldbreaker here would have been superior, and potentially sacrificing your Jester for that would be fine. But here comes the 50-50, gets the immediate death blow onto my Antiquarian, which I was very annoyed about for sure. But, you know, I guess there is a finisher, and it is a priority target, very powerful targets, and here I drop the Adder's Kiss, and sadly I miss, which is terrible, absolutely terrible, because now that doggy is gonna stay alive for a little bit longer, and with the extra death blow resistance, so now the Impale isn't like a 65% chance of killing him, which is pretty nice. It's still a 50-50, which isn't wonderful. Here comes the Houndsary, gets another 50-50 kill, this time with a crit, which puts my Grave Realm in a position of actually being hit, and this doesn't look too good for us, does it? No, it does not. Here I just decide to drop a Adder's Kiss on the Jester, and why is that? Well, chap, why didn't you drop it on the Doggy? Potentially get the death one, even if you don't, then the Impale will be a death blow. Well, my opponent has the Flashlight taste, and they have to click either the Jester or the Hellion, and I think that getting the Hellion down to 0 HP with the Panic Darts is smarter, because now whichever character they click is going to go down to 0, and then Impale comes with a potential double death blow. And a double death blow could really turn the tides of the match here, like absolutely turn the tide of the match. So we will be trying to go for that. Of course, we still have to deal with that Flagellant, which is going to be easier said than done, but he's already used one Exsanguinate, and he's still blighting down to a pretty low amount of HP, so it's not the end of the world. Yeah, not the end of the world. So my opponent does decide to go for the Hellion, kind of potentially sacrificing her to this Impale. We gets the bleed out hit for 15, and the Death Soul resistance debuff, and the bleed as well, but you know, the bleed was quite likely. But we do get to go for that Impale, and that was a power Impale right there. Getting a crit, getting a death blow. No, not quite 2 death blows, that would have been great. But yeah, sadly we can't use Impale twice unless the Antiquarian Corpse is ticking down to 0 from the bleeds. I'm not sure if we are or not, but yeah. There's gonna be a self-mark with that gesture, so of course everyone's favorite act out. When you're playing against a stress team and you mark yourself. Yeah, totally fantastic. So here I'm just hoping that Graceful Anklet comes into clutch, because I still have 35 dodge. My opponent doesn't have any accuracy buffs apart from the Confessor's Gauntlet, which is kind of a joke of an accuracy buff. It's only 6 accuracy. It is really not that significant, and thankfully it does not pull through. And yes, the Antiquarian was ticking down to 0, and now here comes the Power Impale. We're gonna go for it, and that's a double death blow right there. And the Flagellant is ticking down to 0 HP. So I would say, if we would be able to use our favorite abilities, or, you know, if we'd be able to use all abilities at any time, this match would be a confirmed win from now on, because he's still ticking down to 0, he's gonna have to go for an Exsanguinate, the hit chance isn't even that good, the kill chance is far from confirmed, it's less than a 50-50 on my Shield Breaker, and he has minus healing skills. However, of course, that he gets the hit, gets the kill, heals himself, and now I can't even go pick to the face. I have to go move back. I can't even Shadow Fade because I can't use it, right? But there's no defensive moves allowed. So maybe I kind of screwed myself over with that one. But now the Flagellant is ticking down to 0 again, and we will be able to use this Panic Darts. So now my opponent is going to go for a massive misplay, which is hitting the Grave Robber. Here the play is obvious. All you need to do is kill my Shield Breaker, and once my Shield Breaker is gone, I can't hit you anymore. I literally cannot hit you. So if the Shield Breaker died from that punish, it would be GG, because I could no longer have any offensive actions, and the Flagellant wasn't afflicted. But now, the Flagellant is afflicted with 1 Death Door check. Rapturous always has a chance of hitting himself, so if that does come into play here, it would be fantastic. There's still a self-heal on that Flagellant, there's 1 more Exsanguinate, but there's minus healing skills as of right now, so I don't really believe he's gonna go for it. So yeah, he does decide to go for the punish on my Grave Robber again, which is gonna give me another Death Sword check on the Flagellant, this time at 25, which we sadly do not take. Should we have another finisher this time on the Grave Robber? Well, probably. I probably would have won the match at this point if I did have that, but now we're in a really rough spot, because our only way of winning this match is if the Flagellant just... It's 2 ways. Either the Flagellant hits himself, or we go oh my god, the Exsanguinate missed. Either the Flagellant hits himself, or we go afflicted from the passes and the punish, and we have an act out pick to the face on the Flagellant. That's our only chances of success here. So the Flagellant gets an act out, reason is too weak to bear any burden, release it, and of course goes for the only potential move, so that act out is perfectly fine here. The punish does hit, and my Grave Robber drops down to 0. Which isn't great. Once again, if I had Shadow Fade, Big to the Face, if I could have used Toxin Trickery, this match would not be ongoing, but I do not have that, so no act out on the Flagellant, and he's gonna go for a punish. It does hit, thankfully for the Flagellant, but yeah, once again I have to pass here, and I'm almost afflicted, which is good for me. It is good for me, because that's actually gonna give me a chance of act out using Big to the Face. Flagellant acts again at this door, still no act out self-hit, and he's gonna stay alive. Of course, the self-hit is gonna have a 40% chance of taking the death blow, so I do want it very much. There's a lot of messages going on right now, which is basically my opponent, Numcookie, just saying like, my heart, it is racing too much. And yeah, it was, my heart was racing too, because I was just hoping, I was praying for that Flagellant to have an act out, like, please the Rapturous, come into play. I've had the Rapturous before. I remember a specific moment where I just clicked my Flagellant after he got Rapturous, and the first turn I was saying, you know, Rapturous is kind of a buff anyway, and you know, just he was gone. So here, Paranoid has an act out and goes Toxin Trickery. So Paranoid was possibly the best ability, I mean the best affliction we could have gotten, because Paranoid has a chance of using any action. So if you do have a chance of using any action, you can go Pick to the Face, you can go Shadow Fade, or you can go Toxin Trickery, and all of them are great. So now, because we went Toxin Trickery, we have 64 dodge, which is a fantastic amount of dodge, and means that the Punish has less than a 50% hit chance at this point, I believe. It has 110 plus 6, so 121 accuracy against 64 dodge. So yeah, it is less than a 50 hit chance, but we're down a lot of that Source check already. Come on, Paranoid. Nope, Paranoid, no act out. Rapturous, no act out. I really want to Pick to the Face, but I can't break the rules. I have to keep passing here. Flagellant, please, it's been 5 or 6 turns with you afflicted. You haven't hit yourself once. But no, he doesn't hit himself, and here he goes for the Punish. Gets a Death Sword check and a crit as well. So I'm really close to being a goner from the... Oh, what is it? Oh, I think that's Stress. Yeah, who are you talking to, Grave Robber? They're all gone. Your comrades are completely gone. They aren't even in the ground anymore. They're just dust, dust, ashes in the wind. And the Rapturous Flagellant doesn't have an act out again. It's round 14, still not a single meaningful act out from him. And here's gonna come another Punish. It's a 75% death blow chance. I'm really hoping that this one fails and then I can go Pick to the Face and then he's gonna hit himself. Like, the chances aren't really in my favor. They're almost in my favor, but that is gonna be all she wrote for Shepherd Doggy. So yeah, sadly we do not take the W right there. So here goes the Grave Robber, and the Flagellant does take the W. So even if you don't have any offensive moves, you can still win a match, as long as you're not as unlucky as I was. So yeah, definitely great plays by my opponent. It was a very fun idea that they had to give it a try again, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope you did too. So anyway, hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again another time. Cheers.